Kean Connect is the brainchild of our Alumni Leadership Initiative Committee.
So I've spent the better part of 15 plus years working in various human resource functions. I started off in the staffing organization, worked my way more to a generalist type organization, have worked both internationally and domestically. And now, as you can see from the the headline there, I'm at Prudential working, supporting the CFO organization. So
I've been with Verizon now for 24 years.
Got my first job in New York City working for an advertising agency as an HR assistant, and my career grew from there. I've worked in retail, limited brands, Kate Spade, as well as Saks Fifth Avenue, and I'm with Viacom in numerous HR functions. I manage I'm talent acquisition partner for ad sales right now at Viacom.
Currently, I'm the Director of Human Resources for a global shipping firm, Japanese-owned, and I've worked in a whole bunch of industries within human resources capacity. Started out as a recruiting coordinator, HR coordinator, and kind of just worked through and have progressed, fortunately. So,
what is a personal brand?
I first start with just, what I would view as the definition of a brand, period. And I would think of a brand as a promise. That's how companies view themselves. There's a promise that their product is going to deliver a certain level of consistency, quality that you can expect no matter where you go. So if you go, here in New Jersey and you get a cup of Starbucks coffee, you would expect the same consistent type of taste as you would if you were in California or you were in Michigan. Very similar, your own personal brand is a promise of what you're going to deliver to people, to companies, to organizations, to your academic world. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And if you think about that in career terms, many of the most important decisions in each of your careers will happen when you're not in the room. Do we think Tyron is right for this stretch assignment or this promotion? And why? So who's your ally in that room when you're not there? Who believes in your brand and in your brand promise that they're going to put their own self on the line to say this is an opportunity and a chance that I think you should give to this individual? Many assumptions are made about you before people actually meet you. I'm always surprised at how many people either come in for interviews or discuss, they just meet me for the first time. And they've already researched me on LinkedIn, they know my background, they know where I went to school. And then they may know people that know me, and they've asked those questions. I mean, Marina and I shared the fact that she knows an individual who works with me at Prudential. So,
what I'm looking for when I talk to somebody isn't always their qualifications. It's really important, but it's fit, and it's your presence. And can you get a point across? Can I feel you? Can I get a sense of what you're all about? Well, if you don't know your personal brand, if you don't know who you are, and do that little bit of, kind of looking within and figuring out what you're all about, then you're not going to be able to consistently kind of have a brand, and it's not hard to do.
What are some of the common mistakes that people make?
Another misconception is don't overthink it. It's just you. Your brand is you. It's really that simple. You've been in your head your whole life. You know yourself. You just have to give pause, reflect for a minute, think about what's my brand all about, and then you're pretty much good. And then it's just working on consistency and how you want to reflect that in your day-to-day, professionally and personally.
Well, top three things for critical branding. There's probably a top 10.
Okay.
So thanks for only asking me for three. I think I'd start with perception. The word perception comes up a lot when you talk about personal branding. And your first thought is, you're thinking, what do people think of it? It's really what you're thinking people's perception is what others perceive of you. So what are you projecting? And you guys had some great points, so the different ways that you can project your personal brand. It could be how you present yourself in meetings, how you present yourself in class. What are you posting on social media? What are those things you're working on? Those are the things. Those are things that allow others to perceive you in a certain way. So I'd say perception is one. I think number two is consistency. So your brand is only as good as how you keep it up. So are you being consistent with those things that you want others to think about you? Do you want them to know you as a kind, hardworking, somebody who's on time all the time? Is you somebody who shows up for meetings sometimes, but not others? Are you somebody who's positive on social media sometimes, but not others? So I think consistency is important, and I probably add as a third, Evolution. So an evolution of your personal brand. Every one of you have already, and every one of us has or will evolve in our careers and our personal lives. Things will change, people will change all the time. So nothing stays the same for a very long period of time. And if you don't evolve your personal brand, you're probably going to get caught behind a little bit. So I would say, if you don't mind me, just limiting it to 3: consistency, perception, and evolution.
And I think with the perception, there's also versus reality.
Yeah.
So you kind of always have to check yourself a little bit and ask around to your colleagues and family members and your friends, be like, really, how do you perceive me? Do you think I'm funny, or do you think I'm caring? Do you think I'm sincere, or, what have you? So always check yourself to make sure that the perception and the reality kind of mend in the middle there, and you kind of get a good roundabout view of how people see you.
Tyron, who would you consider to be a good example of personal branding and why?
The people that I've seen that have the best brand are individuals that get opportunities that may not necessarily have been afforded to them otherwise. So when I think of, my own personal career, many of my best opportunities, the reason why I'm at the company I'm at now is through individuals that I've known, that I've worked with, and that had a view of me that was positive versus negative, that has helped me to get into many of the opportunities that I have. That means that my brand spoke more for me than actually individuals just actually working with me or knowing me. It was more that, this is someone I think you need to give a chance and give an opportunity, and we're willing to go to bat for me, which I think is very important. But then to get to those next ranks of the corporate ladder, I had to change my brand in the sense that getting stuff done was good for where I was, but if I wanted to get to the next level, they were looking for other things. Is he strategic? Does he think outside the box? Can he sell a vision and lead people and lead teams of people? That wasn't part of my brand at that time because they hadn't seen it. Didn't mean I could not do it. It just meant that was something that hadn't been demonstrated. They hadn't seen it. Wasn't part of the brand that I had out in the organization. I had to find a way to create that. So I think his point was a very good one. You've got to make sure you're constantly adjusting that brand, particularly if you want to continue to grow in different directions within, and no matter whether you're going laterally or moving up.
Recently, my corporate communications department asked me, hey, would you publish an article if you were 22, what you would tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself? So I took them up on that, and I did just that. It was very outside the box for me, publishing something personal on a LinkedIn site. But I did that. It opened up doors and possibilities that I just never thought of before, like being part of a panel like this, reconnecting with my alma mater, becoming a mentor as part of the Alumni Association.
Is the interviews are different. Sometimes they're just over a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's just very informal or at a restaurant or something like that. But people really want to get the essence of you, and you got to tap into that.
One big decision or action. Not sure I've ever thought of that, but I would say, there's one part of my personal brand that I've been told by others and that I feel strongly about. Maybe it's the way I was raised, maybe it's just who I am. It's just loyalty. Loyalty is a big part of my brand. I've carried that over in business, not just staying with the same company, but I spent a good amount of time over 24 years in each of my respective positions. Maybe in the earlier years, there was a lot more movement because you work your way up the proverbial ladder. But loyalty has always been a big part of my brand. I don't know that it was a conscious decision or if it was just subconsciously what I wanted my brand to represent. And that served me well because anybody I've ever worked for or with, they know that they have that in me. So, Tyron said something like, every job I've ever had, people knew I'd get it done. Consistency was, I have that too, I believe, or at least I hope I do. Again, perception is what others are thinking of you, but loyalty is another. So I would say that's one conscious decision that I have and will continue to always keep as part of my personal brand.
What is the best way to open up a conversation with someone that I don't know, but I want to make, a connection or a genuine connection?
I think that's sometimes, that's a skill set that you certainly have to develop. And there's a lot of ways to go through that. So you may find someone on some of these social media sites or something similar that you want to meet, and you're trying to figure out ways to connect with them electronically versus in person. If it's in your company, it may take a little bit more action on your part, because now you're at either a networking function, you see this person in the elevator, and now you've got to take that step to start a conversation and to try and build something. I have people all the time that will invite me out. Tyron, I'm interested in your particular area. Can we just grab coffee? I've always taken those meetings, and the reason I do that is because when I've done that very early in my career, people always took those meetings for me. I feel like that's part of me just giving back. But it also shows a certain level of confidence, and it's not necessarily aggression, but it's a certain level of confidence that the individual has to reach out to those individuals and start to kind of develop relationships. I would encourage you, if there are people that you want to meet, people that you want to connect with, reach out to those individuals. I find people are usually receptive to that. And then it's a matter of understanding that, well, how do I drive this relationship? Because it shouldn't be inherent upon them to reach out to you necessarily. I think if you want to gain something out of that relationship, and I've always found people to be very, at least in my career, and maybe I've been lucky, but when I've reached out to people far more senior to me to say, I'd love to spend some time, I'd love to go grab coffee, love to hear more about what you do and tell you a little bit about myself, people have always been willing to spend that time. That's been an invaluable part of me just learning how to how to reach out to people, how to connect with individuals, how to drive a conversation. Networking functions are hard. You see someone that's far more senior, how do you go up to that person and start the conversation? And then it's kind of that awkward moment of, well, what do we talk about? But you've got to develop that skill set. It's important in order to continue to progress in your career, and overall, just to broaden your network of individuals.
At Verizon, our executives are some of the greatest, nicest people I've ever met. And what you'll find is they're just like us. They're parents, they went to similar schools as you, maybe you have a similar alma mater. They're coaches, they like the Yankees, they like the Giants, and those are just entryways into a real positive conversation that could evolve into a strong business sense and the elevator pitch. So be human, be kind, just be yourself. Don't think that person doesn't have the same thoughts and ideas as you do. And the one thing you absolutely have in common is making sure that your business is the best it could be. There's no doubt about that. You have that connection. So maybe you start there. Hey, I'm doing some great work. You should know about it.
We're wrapping up a little bit. What is a good way to remain memorable to someone in case they have an opportunity?
I would keep in touch. I would keep in touch with individuals. I mean, sometimes, I still have interactions with people I've worked with. At previous jobs, I've worked at a couple of different places. We stay in contact. I think, you can certainly be out of sight, out of mind if you don't find a way to stay in contact with people. Quite frankly, if people have a good perception of you and perception of what your brand is, they will remember that. But there are ways in which you can at least just connect, even if it's just a quick email out or just something to connect with individuals to keep them in top of mind. You may not always get to see people. I mean, people are in different areas. A lot of people I know still work in New York City. I used to work there at one time. I'm not there frequently. So it's hard to connect. But you can still find ways electronically to connect with individuals, even if you're not in the same geographical area, just to make sure they're aware. And then there's all these social platforms that allow us to do that too, like LinkedIn and other things. You never know when things can come back around to really benefit you. I worked fresh out of college at a company named Lucent Technologies years ago, which used to be a part of AT&T, and it was one of the companies that we just, we thought we were great. We would stay at Lucent forever, and it was going to be this great company. That happened, it just it took a downturn. But when I came to Prudential, it was because of someone that I knew at Prudential, at Lucent, that I worked with 12 years prior. I hadn't spoken to that individual since then, but we knew each other, and he had a perception of what my brand was and was willing to go to bat for me, to come to Prudential.
How I got an opportunity at Viacom was because I worked with somebody at Limited 10 years ago. And I had reached out to him saying, look, I'm ready to make a move out of Saks. And he's like, oh my God, we're hiring.
I leverage my professional social media to my own advantage. So for example, if I know I'm going to be in a business interaction with somebody from Prudential or somebody from Viacom, I'll search by those company names on my connections on LinkedIn, and I'm armed with that information. So, hey, it's great to meet you. I know some others that I've worked with in the past from Viacom or from Prudential, and you have that connection. and you can use that to bridge a conversation. Or Twitter, I don't use a lot of, but I share some things that I find interesting. But where I use Twitter is when I'm at events. You know, I travel often, and I'll be at an event, and I'll have a Twitter handle, and I'll say, hey, I'm at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And you'd be shocked how many people reach out to you. Hey, I'm in town too, let's connect. So, you know, those are the ways that I'll use my professional social media sites. So stay active, stay involved, contribute to those things. You'd be surprised how many connections you'll make above and beyond just that initial connection, which, by the way, is almost oftentimes on LinkedIn, you make one impression and one connection, and you never really interact with that person again unless you work it. So.
Shabazz Hyder, class of 2015, is looking to move from life insurance sales into human resources. What advice would you have to give him on how to make that career change and network properly?
I'd say join a professional organization such as Society for Human Resources Management, SHRM. Really, the only people that are there are human resources professionals, people who work for benefits brokers that are trying to sell stuff, which there'll be like 2 people there. People who are about to graduate school and are looking for an internship or an opportunity for an entry-level career choice, and you, recent grad who's in that same kind of boat. So, you know, you got a good voice there, you rep your brand there, bring your resume, you know, make some contacts and get some business cards.
What are some of the transferable skills that I can take from my life insurance sales background and transition that into an HR career? What are some of the things I think are important that I could use to sell myself as being someone that can transition into HR? And realize that you may start, you know, at a very junior level in very, you know, specified areas. I think we all started one way or another in staffing or staffing associates and different things like that. It may be administrative in nature, but at least it gets you exposed to the HR discipline, and then you find ways to move around.
What do you do when, say, you're not feeling as strongly about your personal brand? Say, like, for example, Tyron, you mentioned that people know you as someone that gets things done. I forget, like, what my assets are, I guess, but then I want to know, like, what you suggest to regroup and gain that confidence.
Yeah, you know, confidence is a shaky thing. And if and when you lose it, it can be difficult to get back. But you've got to find a way to gain that confidence back and realize here are the things that I think are my strengths, and I want to play to them. You can't forget that. And I know you said sometimes you might forget, you know, what your strengths are and where you want to focus. What I find the most successful people, in my view, they know their weaknesses. They work on them, but they really do focus on their strengths and how to highlight those and how to position themselves to make sure that they're successful in those key areas and how they transition. So, I mean, we've all gone through periods in our career. I've gone through it myself where, you know, you take a little chip in the armor a little bit, and I think, you know, you're going to make mistakes, but don't let that become defining of you. I think we all make mistakes. The most important thing is that, one, you can learn from that mistake, but 2, what's really been impressive for me when I've dealt with individuals is the ability to get back up after those mistakes. A lot of people can't. But if you want to be successful, you're going to have to be able to, 1, get back up from your mistakes, and at times, just as I shared earlier, you're going to have to reinvent yourself because, as I said, the brand for me was Tyron's great at getting things done. He's great at some of the tactical things. Things will work out well. You know you're going to get a quality product. But as I wanted to move in my career, there were other things that individuals would look to say, is this someone that we think we can promote in our organization to be someone a little bit more strategic, high-level visionary, whatever the keywords you want to use at that point.
And also start small. Every little step you take will take you to a larger step. So even though your confidence could be low, just, you know, if it's right now to get a job, make 5 phone calls today. Or look at 5 different opportunities. Just start small and build on that, so your confidence will, you know, start to increase with each step that you take. So, you know, it's going to be a long road, but you got to start somewhere, and, you know, starting small and building on that gets you to where you need to be.
It was a great question, and I would add, comfort and complacency are your enemy. And it might be an odd statement. Why wouldn't I want to be comfortable? And why, you know, why if I'm doing a good job, I just stay that way. Why not? It's very easy, and maybe many of my panel members here would share the same idea. There have been times in my career I was really comfortable. Things are going well. Everybody seems happy. I'm just kind of sailing. Things are good. You know, it's not rocked up. It's not actually a good thing. There's always got to be a higher gear. You got to reinvent yourself. You got to, you know what, if things are going really well, but what else could I do to make myself stand out in my career if I want that next level job, or I want a different job, or I want to, you know, do something different and do something better. If you start feeling comfort and you start getting complacent, that is definitely your enemy, and you will eventually get to the point where that comfort will change to a place you don't want it to be. Like, you know what? There's a lot of people who are sailing. We need somebody who's going to take it to another level. I heard you say that. You had to reinvent yourself many
Yeah.
times. You were doing a great job. Everybody was, you were Mr. Consistency.
Yeah.
But you wanted to go to that next level, so you had to, you know, people said, well, can you lead people? And you had to show those
That's
things.
right.
So, I've always said to people, comfort and complacency are not your friends. It's okay to have a bit of an edge and be a little bit uncomfortable. Lights a fire under you.
Yeah, when I first started my career, I was all about just trying to prove that I'm like credible, because, you know, people see you and they go, okay, millennial, you're this, you're that, you're whatever, right? You're, you know, all these preconceived things, and they put all their labels that they're going to put on you. But you want to prove yourself that, you know, you're just like anybody else in the office, or better than, or whatever, at whatever you're going to choose to do. So I think part of what's gotten me further, I guess, is the fact that I learned as I've matured in my career to interject more personality, actually, and as I've gone along.
But I would like the panel to speak to sponsorship. And
Sponsorship starts with pairing yourself up with a senior executive and just asking them to be a mentor to you and learning from them.
You know, in order for someone to go to bat for you, they have to believe, or at least have something that they can build off of to say, yeah, I'm going to go to bat for this person, as I talked about earlier, when they're not in the room. And so give it time, but try to make those connections. And try to get on as many projects as you can, so people are exposed to your work.
Hi, my name is Asa. I just have a question as far as recruiting. When you have a applicant who doesn't have a referral, what do you look for on a resume or applicant who's applied?
There's many opportunities for a college student to, lack of a better term, pad their resume, to put something on that resume that shows the commitment. So, yeah, GPA is one thing. It's important that you took your studies seriously. I would say absolutely leverage your time in college or anywhere by having relevant job experience, even more so than things like GPA or, you know, extracurricular activities. Not that they're not important, but job experience.
And also internships are they're extremely competitive. So if you can't get an internship, you could also work for, you know, on campus, you could work in administrative offices, you can work, even working at the Gap or working at, even in the mall. It just shows that you have a tendency to show up on time. You're building your history, your career history. So as long as it's, you know, within what you want to do, I think there's always opportunities. So don't put all your baskets in one saying, I have to get this internship. If it doesn't turn out, look for other opportunities to really increase your career portfolio. And also beef up your skills. Make sure you know Excel inside and out, and PowerPoint and Word, and that you're comfortable with analytics. I think a lot of positions are looking for that. And I've interviewed a lot of recent grads who haven't, you know, used Excel or don't understand pivot tables, don't understand what VLOOKUPs are. I think those are just some of the basic tools that you need in this modern day to really sell yourself and get noticed. And also be prepared. If you're going for an interview, prepare. Get to know the company you're at. Do some research. Just really, you know, be prepared for any type of question, and, you know, don't leave it to single word answers. You know, like, we need to get to know you as a person. Are you going to be able to fit within the culture and within the team, and do you have the right skill set? And even if you have 3 of the 4 things, is that enough for you to move on to the next level? So always just keep yourself, you know, updated on, you know, like practicing the questions. You know, if somebody's gonna ask you a question, just practice your response. So you get comfortable with that. So it's not the first time you're hearing something and you're like, wow, I didn't do too well in that interview. Just practice always makes best. So always just keep top of mind of the questions that, you know, recruiters are gonna ask you. Really do your homework, really understand the position, the job description you read over, get there early. And just, you know, dress appropriately. You know, I think those are some of the key things that, you know, come into play.
I would agree with that. And I think practicing for an interview is such a critical step. And how I would think about it, if you're trying to move from retail into a corporate type role, is what skill sets have I developed in retail? How does that transfer into this position, as Marina said, after you've read through the position and the description, and find ways to practice your answers to that? I just interviewed a young lady that came from retail. She's doing an internship at our company. And I'd asked her I was asking her questions, and I was asking her about feedback. When did she get feedback that she really didn't enjoy, and how did she react to it? And she had an interesting answer. She said, she's very much so an introverted person. And so the feedback that her sales manager was giving her was, she's not greeting the customer, she's not doing enough sales, she's not really doing that frequently enough as part of their expectation. And she just went through the story of how she then transitioned and evolved herself, even though it wasn't in her comfort zone, to become more outgoing, to talk to customers, how she got into sales. And it told me a couple things about her. One, she was receptive to feedback. That's something that's transferable no matter where you go, because you're going to get feedback in your career. Two, she didn't let that down her. She was willing to come out of her comfort zone and do something that she wasn't terribly comfortable with, but she was willing to try it in order to get better. And so that told me a lot more about her as the person versus her HR skills and background, which was limited. So just think about ways in which you can take skill sets you've gathered in a retail environment and then transition those into things that you can use in a corporate environment.
One question that came up in the interview was what kind of weaknesses that I have as an individual. In terms of branding, how would you answer such a question?
You were prepared for it. I would say honesty. What are the things that you have to work on, you have to get better at? And more importantly, what are the things that you're doing already to do just that, get better at it?
If you are fortunate enough to get the contact information, or as you stated before, possibly even meeting a person of power in the elevator, what would you say is the best way to introduce yourself that would make a memorable impact with that person?
I think a level of confidence. If it's a direct interaction, just that confidence level, which I don't know how you could measure that other than
There has to be a line of confidence, not
a
over.
line of confidence. Very good point.
Not
Very,
overconfident.
Very good point. If you're confident in yourself and in your abilities, and you're comfortable in your own skin, to just meet somebody and tell them who you are and what you do and why you may be appropriate for either a job or the next job. That for me is one of the more powerful things. Somebody who's comfortable in their own skin, who makes me comfortable around them.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming out this evening, and thank you to our panelists.